And with that, I would like to welcome our final panel today. It is our School Property Tax Working Group panel, and it consists of Mr. Bob Stillwell, former state representative Frank Ryan, and Mr. Robert Kistler. And gentlemen, I also, before you sit down, I need to note that during the last panel's testimony, we were joined by Senator Dave Argall. Senator Argall, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Senator. Just to note that I'm unavoidably required to be in Berks County today, which is one of those counties that I think cares more deeply about school property taxes than almost any other one in the state. Certainly, our mandate is to look at how school districts are funded. It is also part of that mandate to consider where those dollars come from. I think this next panel is, I'm very pleased that we were able to add them to the schedule to talk about the incredible unfairness of school property taxes, not just in Berks County, not just in York County, but across the state. And so I want to personally welcome them, and again, to the chairs to thank them for allowing this edition. I think this is probably one of the most important panels that we're going to hear from. So my thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Gentlemen, if I could swear you in, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And if so, please indicate by saying I do. I do. Thank you very much. Please begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Senator Phillips Hill and Representative Sterler, for inviting us to testify today. My name is Bob Stillwell. I'm a retired engineering and business development manager who enjoyed a career with a major Navy laboratory and then a second career with a major defense contractor. I now live in Adams County. I'm a community activist trying to bring common sense to school funding in Pennsylvania. We are not here to ask for more money from the general fund or the rainy day fund for schools, but to discuss how to provide revenue for schools another way. It is time to discuss the elephant in the room, school property taxes, and why and how to replace them with a system that generates more tax revenue thanks to good economic growth policies. The school property tax is probably, well, maybe definitely the most despised tax in Pennsylvania. It is a hugely regressive tax, not based at all on one's ability to pay. How much more regressive can a tax be than one that threatens to take your home if you can't pay it? Property taxes made sense in William Penn's day when virtually all wealth and income were derived from property ownership. But the value of my house has no relationship to my income, yet it is taxed as though we still live in the 18th century. This is insane, but we continue to do it anyway. Each of you no doubt sees in your local paper pages like this one, a facsimile one from Adams County, that lists properties this year that have been seized for upset tax sales. I've seen papers from other counties that have 3, even 4 pages like this. This page has 244 properties listed. If Adams County is a representative average of the other 66 counties, then as many as 15,000 properties are put at risk of loss every year. Too many of those belong to families who, despite having paid off the mortgages on their homes, still owe allegiance to the school district for their yearly tax. Your home is never your own if the sheriff can seize it for unpaid property taxes. Pennsylvania boasts that it levies no tax on retirement income. Try telling that to any of your constituents living on Social Security who are in danger of losing their home because they can't pay the school tax from their retirement income. And according to the National Institute on Retirement Security, 40% of retired Americans rely solely on Social Security. I doubt Pennsylvania is any different. To make matters worse, school districts abuse their authority to tax. The Pennsylvania Auditor General recently released a report, January of this year, in which he audited 12 school districts from urban, suburban, and rural areas. They were chosen because each had asked for and received an Act 1 exemption, and yet they had significant reserve fund balances. Incredibly, he found that in every one of those school districts, money was hidden in order to raise taxes. The media announced the audit report under a headline, quote, "School districts tuck money in reserve accounts to justify the need for increases, audit finds." According to the Auditor General, it's not a stretch to say that it's happening across the Commonwealth. Indeed, in my written testimony submitted to you, I describe how it's being done in my own school district. But the school property tax prices are more complicated and more damaging than that. The Commonwealth Court, in its decision, recognized the urgency to repair it. To quote from the President Judge's decision, page 769, quote, "It is evident to the court that the current system of funding public education had disproportionately negatively impacted students who attend schools in low-wealth school districts. This disparity is the result of a funding system that is heavily dependent on local tax revenue, which benefits students in high-wealth districts. It is stunning just how huge that disparity is. According to the PDE's annual financial report, the percentage of property tax contribution to total school district funding ranges from 80% in Lower Merion School District to only 6% in Duquesne City School District. State funding provides most of the rest. What justification is there for taxpayers to be treated so unequally by the state? Such a level of disparity cannot be fixed. The school property tax system of funding schools is irretrievably broken, totally unfair to students and taxpayers alike, and must be replaced. Thank you for your time, and I applaud each of the commission members for their dedication in trying to fix this very difficult problem. I would ask you to now turn the floor over to former Representative Frank Ryan to discuss what replacement might mean.
Thank you so much. And as you can see by looking at us, I'd like the record to reflect that we were not here when Ben Franklin came up with the property tax system, despite what you might think, particularly with me. He was a predecessor, but he was a great guy. I knew his son. One of the things that I'd like to just kind of preface my comments with is, first of all, thank you very much for Senator Christian Phillips Hill and Representative Sterling and the entire commission for allowing us to be here. For those of you who have known me in my legislative capacity, I'd just like to give you a tiny bit of background, if I may. I am a teacher. I spent 10 years as an adjunct faculty member at Franklin and Marshall College. I was on a board of trustees of a postgraduate national security study university for a period of 5 years and chair of their audit committee. I'm an instructor for the American Institute of CPAs as one of their members on continuing professional education, and I spend a lot of time in the classroom. I say that, and by the way, additionally, I was on the PESER's Board of Trustees for 3 years. I mentioned that background because one of the things that happened as a result of this property tax elimination issue is, as I was studying it when I became a legislator, and I became convinced it was absolutely impossible to fix. I had asked in August 2019 if the then policy committee chair would allow for a hearing on property taxes. We had it in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and at that time I was going to make the announcement that I've studied it. It's such an archaic system, it can't possibly be repaired, and I was going to go into the private sector and continue to do what I do in my private sector, which is keep organizations out of bankruptcy, that I could then help the Commonwealth navigate its own financial distress, as Senator Christian Phillips Hill is well aware that we were involved in that process. I'd also planned on announcing my retirement at the time. However, at that meeting in August 2019, The executive director of the Independent Fiscal Office came out and he made a comment. And he said that the prior bill that was done on property tax elimination was fiscally sound. It would work. And the reason that that was significant is the property tax elimination bill was a holistic approach. Many things that Representative Isaacson made as a comment was right on the money. We found that in our analytics. Senator Williams, your comments were very appropriate. Senator Kristen Phillips Hill, Representative Sterler, the outcomes issue, all very much appropriate to bring up in those hearings. And what happened was it breathed life. And the group that you're sitting to my right and left and behind me came up and approached me and said, let's not kill it. Let's see if we can fix it. So in 2021, I did a co-sponsorship memo. It was pretty unusual. And in the co-sponsorship memo, I said, please don't co-sponsor this bill. And I'm going to quote this one aspect. I said, currently there's a case before the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court concerning the fair funding of schools. It's virtually impossible to determine how a court will rule. However, Pennsylvania's education funding is so complex and archaic that a judicial decision would likely be reams of paper in the making, and I think that's pretty accurate. My replacement bill was equally as many reams of paper in the making. It's also very unlikely that the court would make a decision on how to fix it, but would remand it back to the legislature to do, and that's what obviously happened. The reason we wanted to make sure that we brought our testimony today to the table is our research has indicated a number of different factors. First of all, the school funding crisis took centuries to create. And I applaud you for all the work you're doing because I forget who made the comment. Senator Williams, I think you said 5 years, or Senator Rothman, someone said 5 years to fix. It's going to take 5 years to 10 years to implement any change unless you're willing to sacrifice the soundness of the entire education system and perhaps the economy. The current rate of increase in school property taxes is absolutely unsustainable for a significant number of seniors. And candidly, I was stunned by the number of low-income families who approached me and said the same thing. So they said you have made home ownership unaffordable to us. The cost drivers in education, and I provided you a book. It's called Revolutionizing Accounting for Decision Making. I did it for a reason, because it talks about cost drivers. And in 2001, the accounting profession came to a realization that our principles were archaic, and we redid ourselves. And I am a CPA, by full disclosure. And you look at sunk costs versus others. So let me make a comment to you. The cost drivers of education include a PESER's contribution rate, which approximates 20% of a school district's funds. That does nothing to take care of an education of a child. It's a sunk cost. But you have to do it. It's a liability. Parental involvement or lack of involvement in a child's education is significant. Representative Isaacson, your comment was really appropriate. You're dealing with a lot of issues in Philadelphia. I've read all published financial statements, annual comprehensive financial reports for every school district in Pennsylvania. I can't wait for the movie to come out. The transfers in and out of a classroom during the course of an academic year, which is substantial in Philadelphia, Erie, Lebanon, Reading, Harrisburg, and other areas, Lancaster, are significant and disruptive. I'm not making a value judgment about why people move in or out of a district, but they do, and that's a cost driver over which a teacher can do nothing. They are the recipient of somebody else's actions. Mandates, either self-imposed or not. Needs of children with disability are a critical issue. And I mention this because the Federal IDEA Act has never met its statutory requirement of funding 40% of the required issue. And by way of full disclosure, I did a letter to the Department of Education in the United States. I asked the representatives to sign it. Every member who was a member of the House of Representatives at the time signed that letter. I had over 170 representatives sign the letter saying that the federal government needs to step up. That's a major cost driver. Facilities maintenance. I was on, I believe it's Channel 10 in Philadelphia, talking about the bill. And I named virtually all the schools in Philadelphia. And a reporter said to me on the site, said, how do you know this? I said, you can't make these decisions unless you're willing to get into that level of detail. Hold harmless agreements that you've obviously heard before. So I mentioned this because there's a number of other factors that I think people need to be very much aware of. First of all, when school districts merge as a hold harmless agreement, in case you're not aware, the PTEWG's pension liability is a liability of every single school district. There's no, in fact, I probably shouldn't mention a school district because they might say, is that school district in distress? And it wouldn't be. But if one of the larger school districts were to become insolvent and unable to pay its pension bills after the state has its ability to seize funds, all that unfunded liability becomes a liability of all the remaining school districts. And that's already happened in Pennsylvania once in the past couple of years. And so you need to be aware that these are issues that require a very rational and realistic and total complete change to the way this process is done. The approach that we've used and come up with is a result of all of that research. But I want to finalize my comments by just saying your efforts have been laudatory. I can't thank you enough. I can't think of a more difficult task for all of you. I will tell you, if you get it wrong, it will likely end up in court again. It'll be relitigated. If you get it wrong, children will get hurt. If you think it's going to be an easy fix, I guarantee you it won't be. If you think anyone's going to be happy by the result of your decisions, I can guarantee you absolutely not. They will not be. When I came out with my bill, I had over 5,000 hate emails. And when I took out the ones from my family, I answered those 10. And I answered every single email that was not a death threat. And in doing so, the second year I introduced it was an entirely different perspective. Your work is tremendous. It's needed to be done. And it requires that we look holistically at the economic structure of what's happened in Pennsylvania. Senator Miller, what you and Senator Rothman did about advancing some of these reforms are critical to get this done. And I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Kistler.
Good morning. I want to thank the entire commission for allowing us to speak today. My name is Robert Kistler. I'm a retired product engineer in the semiconductor industry. What I am not is a polished public speaker. What I am is a voice for tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians. Our group here is truly bipartisan. We're made up of all party affiliations, although there is about 60, I think. We make up 3. Our group has done a tremendous amount of analysis looking at this problem because it's a very complex problem, as we all know. Our solution, we believe, will meet the court order biggest concerns as well as provide a transition to a new form of funding. It's very important to consider cash flow, and as Mr. Representative Ryan stated, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to make that a change, and we believe that our bill does that effectively. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to digress for one slide only. This slide captures, I guess, what Senator Argel said is our worst in nation funding. The red line on this graph is the percent of real estate taxes of total revenue. As Mr. Stillwell indicated, it ranges from 6% to 80% and everything in between. It's truly irrational, if not discriminatory. The court order was absolutely correct in stating, in their opinion, that Pennsylvania has an over-reliance on local property taxes. And what's hideous about the taxing is hold harmless and the local property tax bases lock in that disparity. Even if you would vacate hold harmless, the difference in the local property tax bases do not allow you to ever equalize that. You could take the school districts in the lower left of that graph, the ones down in the teens and below. You could allow those school districts or have them increase to the Act 1 index every year, and they will never catch the other side of the schools. There's just no way that this system can help with your adequacy goals. Next slide, please. This slide, we did an impact of analysis, a back test of implementing our solution by looking back. So we started in school year 2015, 2016. If you look at the red columns, they are real estate tax revenue generated by the school by property taxes. And the green stack column is our solution, okay? If you look for the first 5 years, our solution is pretty much in line with the revenue funding. The last couple years, though, our solution generates more revenue. The reason that is because of the sound economic policies of the bill simply leveraged economic growth. You're looking at as much as $7.7 billion that was left on the table. Next slide, please. This is just another way of looking at the data. It's a cumulative growth chart, but I want to point something out. It's very important. The chart is 100% accurate, and it's based on IFO data, their published data. What I did not realize is 2 days ago I wrote to the IFO and I said, why is there such a discrepancy or a disparity in 1920 revenue data compared to 2021? And the answer I got back explains that dip, because it's not real. And I'm going to read their response to me. They said approximately $1.3 billion was shifted from fiscal year 2019-20 to 2020-21 under the pandemic-related tax due dates. Most of it was personal income tax. So $1.3 billion was shifted to the following year, and that's why you see that dip. It's not real. Next slide, please. There's a lot of consternation about when the bill was first introduced about extending PIT to some retirement income, that being with the exception of Social Security or equivalents like railroad pension and military pensions. But let me assure you, and the IFO data shows it right here, that it is a financial windfall for seniors. If you look at the top table, it shows that seniors pay $3.34 billion in school property taxes. Under the potential property tax replacement revenues generated by the IFO, it shows that $1.49 billion would be paid by seniors by the PIT extension. That's nearly a $2 billion windfall. That's a win by any definition. Next slide, please. My last slide shows the historic tax rates of SUT and PIT since their inception. SUT has remained flat for 55 years, and PIT has not needed to be changed for 19 years. PIT and SUT money is collected, and that is funneled into the general fund. The state pays their portion of basic education from the general fund as well as other budgetary needs. Yet, no tax raise was ever needed. Why is that? Because of the naturally occurring growth in wages and cost of products and services. So it's already stable enough to fund the state portion of funding schools. There's no reason it can't handle it all. And finally, next slide, please. I want to thank the Commission again for giving us this opportunity for our voices to be heard. We trust you'll feel our plan elegantly solves today's problems and tomorrow's revenue growth while also satisfying the court order, reducing the need for the court to revisit. Thank you.